Good morning, I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. There's been a lot of talk about Pauline Hanson and One Nation lately. Now look, before I go on, I know Australian politics can sometimes make you immediately want to stick needles in your ears, but there's a big change happening right now and we should all be across it. Also, it's going to be a bit of a long one today if you are sticking with us to the end, so plan to listen to this one when you have the time, okay? We're going to speak to someone who can give us an idea on what One Nation finding their power right now actually means for Australia. Is it the end of days, like some are predicting, or is it a shift reflective of where Australian minds are at in 2026? Okay, it's time to find out what's been happening while you were sleeping. The UK went and lost themselves another Prime Minister. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has resigned, paving the way for Britain's seventh leader in 10 years. Starmer says his transition out of the position will see his replacement take over when Parliament returns in September. It's been less than 2 years since Starmer won the election by a landslide, a victory that promised to end the chaos in British politics, which had seen a procession of leaders come and go. But Starmer said it was clear his party wanted him gone, so he advised King Charles of his decision and announced it outside 10 Downing Street alongside his wife Victoria. The frontrunner for the leadership is Andy Burnham, the former mayor of Greater Manchester, who won a recent by-election, beating out a member of Nigel Farage's Reform UK party, which has been leading Labor in the polls for more than a year. The victory has given hope for the party to reverse their polling fortunes. A man who's been accused of stealing from a victim of the Bondi terror attack has faced court refusing to answer any questions. 35-year-old Danny James Ridley, who's also a photographer, allegedly used the chaos of the attack to steal a set of camera equipment worth more than $3,500. The equipment belonged to 61-year-old Peter Marr, a retired police officer who was one of the 15 people killed during the attack. New South Wales police allege Ridley pawned the gear, which was later recovered, including an SD card that contained Mr Marr's final photographs. Ridley faced court yesterday charged with larceny, disposing of stolen property and furnishing false information. He remained silent as he walked from the court. A giant petrel, which was also found unwell on the same beach as Australia's first confirmed case of H5 avian flu, has also tested positive. The result was confirmed by the CSIRO after the bird was found on a beach near Esperance in WA. A brown skua, another seabird, was diagnosed with the deadly strain just days before. The virus has spread across the entire globe now, causing millions of deaths across multiple bird species, both wild and domestic, and has also infiltrated mammal populations, having devastating impacts on sea lions and elephant seal populations. The first round of peace talks between the US and Iran have been completed, despite the opening of the event being interrupted by Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz again and the US threatening to bomb them again. Technical talks will continue throughout the week at the Swiss mountaintop resort as mediating nations Qatar and Pakistan navigate towards a final peace deal between the two warring nations, with the 60-day period outlined in the Memorandum of Understanding. At the end of day one, the parties announced via a statement that they had agreed to a mechanism to end the fighting in Lebanon and open a communications line to help ensure safe passage for commercial ships through the contested strait. And today, Vance has said that Iran has agreed to allow UN inspectors back into the country. The British would like Oasis's Wonderwall to become their World Cup team's unofficial anthem, and they have some star backing for the request. Oasis songwriter Noel Gallagher has told The Sun that Wonderwall belongs to the people and it was a magical moment between the people and the players. Referring to the moment, an estimated 20,000 England supporters sang the song after their 4-2 victory over Croatia on Wednesday. The estate of former One Direction star Liam Payne, who tragically passed away nearly 2 years ago, will be left to his son Bear. When the 31-year-old fell from the balcony of his Buenos Aires hotel on October 16, 2024, he had no will in place. Under UK rules, his 9-year-old son was always in line to inherit the estate because his father wasn't married or in a civil partnership at the time of his death. Some of the money can be used to help him before he reaches adulthood and inherits the money in its entirety when he turns 18. Bear's mum, Cheryl Cole, and lawyer Richard Bray are acting as administrators. The documents show Bear is set to inherit the equivalent of $41.3 million Australian. Perhaps as a testament to his footy nickname, AFL legend Tony Modra has avoided serious brain injury and is miraculously on the road to recovery after a freak accident last week. Former Adelaide Crows and Fremantle Dockers player nicknamed Godra for his out-of-this-world high-flying marking ability was driving near his property south of Adelaide on a windy Thursday night when a tree branch reportedly went through his windscreen, his cattle truck ramming into a tree. He reportedly had no concussion, no brain injury, and remembered everything that happened. He's out of intensive care but still has to have more surgery as the branch damaged his face. Well, that's a wrap of the top stories today, folks. If you're heading off to work or play, have a good one. Don't forget to subscribe to the Solo Bureau Substack and keep rating and reviewing the show. It's getting us noticed, friends, and that is nothing but good for independent journalism. If you are sticking around and you're wondering what all the talk about One Nation is about, we'll find out what they stand for so you can make the decision on whether you're also aligning with a stack of other Aussies politically in 2026. Almost 30 years ago, Pauline Hanson was elected to Ipswich Council. It was her first foray into the political world, having worked, most notably, at a fish and chip shop in the Queensland town. She'd also been a bookkeeper, a Woolies checkout chick, and I do say that with love, don't come for me, and helped run her husband's plumbing business. She grew up in a working-class family of English immigrants in Brisbane, the fifth of 7 kids. Her parents ran the local milk bar, as they call them in Queensland. It's a deli where I come from. She left school at 15 to enter the workforce. After being elected as a councillor, she joined the Liberal Party in 1995, but was disendorsed in 1996 following controversial comments she made about Aboriginal welfare. It was that year that this became part of the Australian vernacular.
Please explain.
That same year, she ran as an independent, winning the seat of Oxley in Brisbane, delivering this memorable maiden speech.
I come here not as a polished politician, but as a woman who has her fair share of life's knocks. I am fed up to the back teeth with the inequalities that are being promoted by the government and paid for by the taxpayer under the assumption that Aboriginals are the most disadvantaged people in Australia. Immigration must be halted in the short term so that our dole queues are not added to. I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians. Of course I will be called racist, but if I can invite who I want into my home, then I should have the right to have a say in who comes into my country.
In 1997, Pauline Hanson founded her own political party, One Nation. Her controversial anti-immigration views saw her inundated with death threats that led to her making this video.
Fellow Australians, if you are seeing me now, it means I have been murdered.
An electoral redistribution saw Pauline lose her federal seat. She then contested the seat of Blair at the 1998 election, where she did win the primary vote but lost on preferences to the Liberals. In 2003, Pauline Hanson was found guilty of electoral fraud, accused of falsifying 500 One Nation supporters to obtain nearly $50,000 in electoral funding. She was sentenced to spend time in jail, but the conviction would eventually be overturned, and she was later acquitted on appeal. She spent 11 weeks in maximum security. She tried to get back into Parliament in 2004 and again in 2007, but was unsuccessful. In 2014, she returned as One Nation's leader, and in 2015, the party was renamed Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Leading a surge in One Nation candidates at the 2016 election, Pauline Hanson ran for the Senate and won, representing Queensland. The next year would be the first time she would enter the Senate chamber dressed in a full burqa, declaring it a security threat, a stunt she would repeat almost 10 years later. She successfully defended her position in the Senate at the 2022 election and is currently serving in the role today. In the past, Pauline Hanson has been seen as a representative of a slice of Australia that we often don't like to admit exists. Anti-immigration, anti-trans, anti-globalism, anti-vaccine mandate, anti-abortion, anti-public broadcaster, just all around quite anti. But in 2026, One Nation has seen an historic surge in support. They've taken the lead in popular polling platforms, with Aussie voters fed up with high taxes, migration figures and economic strain. At her recent National Press Club appearance, Hanson thanked Australians for catching up with her party. She called the current immigration level a catastrophe, blaming migrants for housing pressures and cultural tension. She argued for a monocultural society rather than a multicultural one. She called climate change a hoax, saying her party would block plans for renewable energy projects. She called for an overhaul of Australia's workplace relations, arguing wage rises shouldn't be mandated for low-paid workers. She focused on her anti-trans agenda, saying trans women should not be allowed in sport or change rooms. She called for the end of the SBS and the defunding of the ABC, and stated that paid parental leave should go, asking why businesses should have to pay for that. So what does that mean for Australia's political future? Mark Kenny is the director of the Australian Studies Institute at the Australian National University and is the host of the Democracy Sausage with Mark Kenny podcast. Mark Kenny, welcome to the Solo Bureau.
Thank you very much, Claire. Good to be here.
Okay, Mark, let's talk about Pauline Hanson. First of all, I wanted to get an idea from you about how Aussies react to Pauline Hanson as an Australian, because we do love an everyday guy, and that's probably part of Albo's appeal, for example, his, working class single mum council house upbringing. Pauline essentially does have a very similar story. Do you think that's why people sometimes do gravitate towards her, that common people effect that everyone's talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly good observation to make, and I'd caveat it by saying that, as you say, sometimes gravitate toward her. The truth is she's been around a long time. This may also be a part of her allure, that she's sort of indefatigable, persistent. She's been only good for, 3 or 4% of the vote most of the time that she's been around. But nonetheless, she is a sort of a well-known quantity. She's an unpolished diamond, if she's a diamond at all. And that makes her extremely relatable. She's both politician and non-politician at the same time, even though she's been around all that time. And that's partly attributable to her kind of unpreparedness, her kind of ordinariness, as you say. But also, I suppose, the fact that she is very much a plain speaker. She's prepared to say what some people think, but don't hear from other politicians. And I guess also because she's outside the major parties, and so she's kind of been able to propagate this idea of being an outsider, a kind of an insurgent, someone speaking up for those that aren't represented in the parliament by all these polished politicians with their staff and their talking points and their scripted views and their respect for the institution and all that sort of stuff. She doesn't bother with all of that, and to some extent that makes her her attractive to a section of the market. Of course, it doesn't explain what's gone on since her numbers suddenly shot up, but we can come to that.
Well, let's talk about Hanson herself. I just want to get an idea from you of what she actually is like as a politician, because for the majority of us who view Pauline Hanson from the outside, we only really know her as a stunt maker. The Burqa stunts, the Please Explain, the assassination video, all these spectacles that she gets brought back into the headlines for. But is she a good politician, Mark? I mean, I don't know how to define good in 2026, but is she an effective representative for the people of Queensland?
I'd forgotten about that assassination video. That brings back such memories.
Wild times.
Yes. So she's been back in the Senate since 2016. And as far as, measuring her against other politicians, you'd say, well, she gets a fair bit of coverage, so she's good at that. She does do a lot of stunts, so she's good at that. I mean, wearing the burqa into the parliament, which she's done twice in recent years. Clearly a stunt, clearly designed to attract attention and draw the ire of others, and therefore be controversial. But she doesn't do policy work. She doesn't really do parliamentary work. She's not good on her feet. The rules don't seem to apply to her, and now we have this situation where, in effect, something that John Howard said way back in about 1986. He said that the times would come to suit him. And a decade later, they did. Well, there's a sort of a sense about that with Pauline Hanson now. She says she hasn't changed, but Australia's caught up with her. And I think there is some truth in that, whether we feel comfortable about that or not. And I have certain levels of discomfort with it. But the truth is there is now a very significant slice of the electorate that is saying, I don't like what I'm getting from the major parties. I don't feel secure in the economy. I don't think politics and policy that has been pursued by the major parties is serving me. I feel vulnerable. I feel pissed off. And Pauline Hanson seems to be the only one who understands that. And so there is a sense now that the coming together of all of these circumstances, and it's been widely noted that we've had, not just the GFC back in 2007-8, but also the the COVID crisis. We've had various shocks of various kinds happening. And of course, we're kind of in one at the moment, a very economic natured shock with what's going on in the Middle East. And so all of these things have come together and I think just made for a kind of a perfect storm against the major parties. And that's Pauline Hanson's time to make hay, and she's been doing it very effectively.
Okay, so what do we read from that polling then, Mark? So the polls have put One Nation not just ahead of Liberals, which we kind of saw coming because the Liberals had been decimated elections, not just federally, but states as well. And I guess One Nation was seen as the only real alternative to a Conservative Party after becoming disillusioned with the coalition, but also they're beating the Labor Party in the polls too in some aspects. So what do we read from that? Like if there was an election today, considering the polling as it stands, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a really tough one to answer that, but you're right. The circumstances do look really quite remarkable, and they mark a sort of a fracture point with what has been a continuum of political position or political sort of the architecture of Australian politics has largely been set up since the Second World War. And suddenly we have this circumstance where the two major parties are actually playing second fiddle to what appears for most voters to be a kind of a newcomer on there, a third party, a minor party, a party of some extreme, and a party that is essentially outside of the normal institutional framework. And it's hard to know where that's going to go or what that's going to add up to. Like, as you say, if an election were held right now, and if all of those people who said they are thinking of voting for One Nation went and did it, then we may see a circumstance where One Nation is in the dominant position to form a government. It's at least theoretically possible. And yet, if I'd said that to anyone a year ago, they would have thought that I'd taken leave of my senses, that this was just sort of impossible to imagine. Even now, I think many people in orthodox politics find it close to impossible to imagine, but the numbers do point somewhere toward that. That said, at the moment on the numbers, so that's assuming that Pauline Hanson's rise does not continue, and that can't be ruled out, the possibility that she's actually going to continue to grow in support. But on the numbers at the moment, even though they look very good for One Nation, it's still pretty hard to imagine her having a majority that she could command. I mean, for a start, she's not in the House of Representatives herself, so that makes it impossible for her to be a prime minister, even if her party had a majority on the floor of the parliament. But also, she would have to pick up every coalition seat, and even if she did pick up every coalition seat, she still wouldn't have a majority. She does need to take seats off Labor. There is some evidence that she might be able to do that in quite a number of cases, but most people suggest at the moment on reading the numbers, you'd still say that Labor would have a reduced majority or perhaps be required to go into a coalition or some sort of arrangement with some of the crossbench. So it's certainly a redrawing of political lines, and we haven't seen this kind of thing, not in my lifetime. And we'll see where it goes. It has to sustain itself, but for another nearly 2 years. But that's not impossible.
Do we get a sense, Mark Kenny, that we are in that position like we were in 2016 when we went, surely America won't elect Donald Trump? Is that where we're at?
That's what a number of people keep pointing out. I've written some things about Pauline Hanson's performance at the press club the other day, which I think had some time bombs in there for her, some depth charges that will go off a bit later and may cause her problems. But other people say, well, you're just missing the, just like you thought that Kamala Harris was going to win, which I did. And as you say, we didn't think that Donald Trump could be re-elected in 2024 after everything, but he was. So, perhaps political experts aren't as expert as they think when it comes to these circumstances because they are so novel. And it is possible that we are watching the complete collapse of the sort of orthodox political settlement that has existed, as I say, really since the Second World War, and that politics will change. If it does, and if it is to be one nation, then I think we are in for a quite dramatically different Australia from the one we have at the moment. And I think that prospect alone becomes quite upsetting and frightening for a number of people. And I imagine it's a hard thing to have to deal with if you're a part of the multicultural community, or if you're if you're a whole any number of demographics that Pauline Hanson insulted the other day in her press club address, and particularly in the question and answer session afterwards.
Well, let's address that, because her platform at the National Press Club was, as I've pointed out just before, incredibly anti. So it's anti-immigration, it's anti-trans, it's anti-globalisation, it's, anti-paid parental leave. Like, it's a lot of anti of current Australian lifestyle. Is that maintainable, to just be against so many things without seemingly having a lot of policy as to what Australia should be for?
I don't think it is. I mean, that remains my position. I don't think it is possible to put together a majority in the parliament with such a negative approach. I mean, One Nation's whole history is as a party of grievance, a party of complaint, a party that talks all the time about being the kind of paragon of patriotism, and yet runs down the country. There's hardly anything about the country that modern Australia that One Nation seems happy with. And to your list, I would add anti-worker. I mean, she called Australia's wage and salary earners lazy. She talked about it being impossible to sack people. Now, I've seen politics played in this country when John Howard, for example, changed workplace laws to make it easier to dismiss people, and it was politically disastrous for him. The unions and the Labor Party were able to campaign very effectively on that. And when people are feeling vulnerable, the idea that they can't even rely on their job and that they won't have any wrongful dismissal protections under a One Nation regime, that's hardly reassuring. Then you've got the anti-women aspect of it, as you say, anti-migration. We've got more than half the population in this country is either a migrant or a descendant of a migrant. And these people have effectively been told, keep your culture to yourself. We're going to have a kind of a monoculture. I mean, she called it a monoculture. So there's so much about modern, sophisticated, tolerant Australia, which is in her sights. And there's so little in terms of constructive policy that, to me, I think it's going to have to flame out. It's going to create more enemies than it does supporters. But perhaps at this time, midway through a term, people are prepared to, say they're considering it. They might feel like giving the government a kick. They might feel very, annoyed about the cost of living and so forth. And so they feel like giving the government a kick. But I think when it comes time to cast their vote, real votes in real ballot boxes, I'm still of the view, notwithstanding your point about Trump in 24 and stuff, I'm still of the view that it will not amount to the sort of challenge it looks like at the moment.
Well, we shall check back in 2 years, Mark Kenny, and see where we stand.
I've been wrong before.
As we all have. Mark, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights on this. We really appreciate it.
It's a great pleasure, Claire. Cheers.
Thanks for sticking with us on this one today. I know it was a lot, but it's important we know what's going on in Canberra. Thanks to everyone who's been reaching out to be guests on the show for upcoming stories. I have quite the team assembled now. I feel almost Avengers-like at the moment. If you want to join because you have a particular skill, a particular expertise, there's a few ways you can get to me. Drop into the DMs. You can also send me an email, claire@thesolobureau.com. But the best way is to sign up to the Solo Bureau Substack, because that is where Avengers assemble. Have a great day, friends. Catch you tomorrow.
Bye.